So, welcome to Cinephile Entertainment. I'm the Cinephile critic, and today I'll be reviewing this film. These crosses surrounding the Abbey, I think they're to keep something in, not out. So The Nun is a film directed by Corin Hardy and stars Tassia Flamega as Sister Irene, Bonnie Arnaz as Sister Victoria, Damien Baicha as Father Bert, Charlotte Hopp as Sister Owana, Jonas Boyett as Frenchie, and Sandra Tells as Sister Ruth. So The Nun starts off in 1952 Romania, and what you have is you have an abbey there. And in that abbey, there is a particular priest that went to apparently the dark side and decided to, bring a certain type of demon from a certain point of hell, just because. There are relics there and other things in this particular abbey. So what happens is this spirit then haunts the abbey, but it needs something in order for it to be able to be loose and roam and come as it pleases. What happens is there is strange going-ons in the abbey. Something happens to one of the nuns. The Vatican hears about it and calls on Father Bert to investigate what is actually happening in this particular abbey. But in order for him to understand what's happening to this abbey, he also has to take this particular practicing nun that the Vatican feels that there is a link between her and what is happening at the abbey, and they want basically him to take Sister Irene with him and investigate what is happening in the abbey. They then recruit the service of Frenchie, who is basically the guide there, trying to investigate and cover up. As they do, as Catholicism do, they cover up. They're very good at covering up. So that's kind of like what this film is about. And obviously, if you know The Nun, then you also know that it was first revealed in The Conjuring 2. Because Marvel has a universe. Now you've got horror parts having a universe. So this is kind of like the universe of The Conjuring. Conjuring 1 and 2 are highly regarded films. I haven't seen the first one, but I saw the second one. The Conjuring 2 is very good. And so this element, this nun, is taken from The Conjuring 2. Now, the nun in The Conjuring 2 was scary. The nun in this film, it doesn't work. And this film doesn't work on a number of levels because there is not enough content. Now, one of the things I would say is this film, when it comes to directing, again, as we're going to say, this film is actually directed quite well in terms of scene setups. Now, the scene setup in these films, I personally feel that it's done very well. There's certain things that happen, I thought that they've done it very well. Like when Father Burke is in the graveyard, something happens anyway. I think that whole scene was done very well. However, biggest issue in this film is not direction, is not directing, is actually content. There is not enough content in this film for this film to actually even exist. The way how they went about with the storyline, it makes it disjointed, it makes it uninteresting. I will say that this film is probably a film about scares and the way you scare than it is in terms of story and a horror story. There is not much story in this film. This film is lacking vastly in content, and this is what makes this film less good than what it could have been. This is what made Conjuring 2, a really good film, because of the story. There was a story to it. The horror element latched onto the story. You didn't have, the horror and the story trying to find where it fits within the horror. That is kind of what you have here. So you have an abbey that seems to be desolate. There doesn't seem to be anyone that lives there but ghosts. They go there to investigate, but the type of investigation, it lacks because there's no content. So when it gets to the part of investigating what happened, no one cares because the story is not gripping enough for anyone to care why these goings-ons is happening. Then you see a lot of The Nun. This film just falls flat when it comes in terms of, weaving a story, weaving a narrative, because what they do have in here, it misses the mark. Opening act is all the story you're going to get. I thought Father Burke was okay. I did like Sister Irene. I did like some of the other nuns that were there to a certain extent, but you can only do what you can do with what you're given. One of my biggest criticism from this particular film is actually Frenchie. I feel that Frenchie, he's sort of tongue-in-cheek, and especially when it comes back in those days, those people were extremely respectful to like the church and nuns and everything else. So the way how he sort of is introduced to Sister Irene and Father Burke, I thought that was a bit too much. I think Frenchie, he's kind of the wrong person, the wrong cast to be in this film. It should have been someone older. Now I'm not saying that he had to have been a lot older, maybe someone in his mid-30s, that type of, because I don't see that as being old, but someone in their mid-30s. Because what this film is missing is the history. A person that is grounded in the history of the land, in the history of the area. And this is what this film is missing. So you have Frenchie who's young, who doesn't know much about the area. You are missing the archaeology knowledge in this film. You are missing the history knowledge of this film. And it doesn't need to be uncovered. What it needs to be is a guy that knows certain things about the history of the place. And I feel that those types of people, there is much more impact in terms of story and gravity than when it comes from someone just uncovered something. That is the issue with this film. It doesn't have enough content. Now, the scares and the everything that you have is okay. You kind of know that they're coming. It's not scary at all. I mean, there's certain parts in here that is done very well. Losing grip with reality, that type of thing is done quite well. But in terms of the audience latching onto something, that is missing. And for me, I personally feel that, especially coming from The Conjuring, didn't see The Conjuring 1, but that's got rave reviews, but especially coming from The Conjuring 2, which I have seen, this is actually a big letdown. The other issues that I have as well in here with this film, they talk about Latin. You're talking about demons and things like that. Latin is not the oldest language. And so I don't understand when in horror films they latch onto Latin, because there's a lot of languages that predates Latin, and I'm sure they can speak that as well. It's interesting that they keep on talking about Latin. You rarely hear Hebrew, you rarely hear Arabic, but they're a language of old that never gets mentioned. Only Latin apparently, because that's how far back the modern world goes back to. It goes back to Latin, that's it. I wouldn't say there's heaps of cliches in this particular film. I just feel that there's not enough content in this film. This film is not warranted. The story is barely existing. The plots, I couldn't tell you what they are. It's more a film of horror than it is a horror story. And that is kind of how I feel about this film. And that's why I'm going to rate this film as a snooze fest, because there's not really much to keep you interested in this film. So that's my review of The Nun. Have you seen The Nun? Have you seen The Conjuring 1 and 2? And, if you did, what do you feel about this film versus, The Conjuring? Let me know. Let's get this conversation started. I would love to hear your opinions about what you feel about these films. And thank you for watching my review. If you liked what you saw, then please click the subscribe button. If you're thinking, I'll come back, I'll see what else you got, then hopefully I'll see you again. And remember, until next time, keep safe. Bye.